Well, good afternoon, everyone. We are um, continuing now with the third part of Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 1. And this is particularly upon the 6 stages, maybe 7, of discipleship. So we're calling it the 6 Stages of Discipleship video commentary. And before DK gets into the explanation of these 6 stages, a more detailed explanation, he is giving us some stanzas for disciples. We've just finished, I think, a very symbolically interesting stanza, and it's been called the sublimation of the 5 human stages. And there is color symbolism, particularly, involved in it. But now we look at something called discipleship and pain. I guess as disciples in training, we're used to that idea because we're so identified with the personality and especially with the physical body that any detachment from it seems to involve some sort of pain. Okay. The cat chewed on my wire here, so it's not too reliable. The sons of God who know and see and hear, and knowing, know they know, suffer the pain of conscious limitation. Well, we know what we have been, and we know somehow deep down what we were able to access previously. And even now, we are alive and well on those higher planes. This is maybe called the divisibility of the spirit in the Agni Yoga teachings. Deep in the innermost depths of conscious being, their lost estate of liberty eats like a canker. So there is this irritation of the spirit always striving for freedom and rebelling against the limitation which emanation has imposed upon us. Pain, sickness, poverty, and loss are seen as such, and from them every son of God revolts. He knows that in himself, as once he was before he entered, prisoner into form, he knew not pain. Sickness and death, corruption and disease, they touched him not. The riches of the universe were his. That's why the Christ, looking upon us, he regards us as poor ones, and naught he knew of loss. Well, that high estate is sealed off from that aspect of consciousness which is confined to the form. And yet, mysteriously, we still have that freedom. The idea is that the monad left the Father's home on its aeonial pilgrimage, and yet remained. How is that possible? How is it possible? Well, think of the original candle that lights all the many lesser candles ever reduced in form. It remains, even though the lesser candles burn. The lives that enter into form with lives self-conscious, okay, the lives that enter into form along with lives self-conscious, the Deva lives, which build the forms indwelt by all the sons of God, they know not pain or loss or poverty. So the Devas evolve in a different way, and they are not ever trying to break out of form, as man is, having undertaken the sacrifice of self-implantation in form. But the Deva lives have their rejoicing in the building of the form. The forms decay, or the form decays, the other forms retire, and that which is required to nourish and keep strong the outer lacks. Well, that happens with all death processes. There is the detachment through the weakening of the form and a kind of restoration into at least something of the previous state, but lacking also will and planned intent. That is the Devas. At least those that are not so self-conscious, they feel no aggravation and know not clear revolt. And this speaks, to the ray one component in the nature of man. Sometimes I wonder, whether the whole human kingdom is not coming in spiritually or in terms of its spirit on the first ray, even though the second ray soul and fourth ray personality will be a destiny for the human race. The Devas don't seem to have that, though of course there are powerful Devas in a lesser sense on the first ray. The forms decay, or the form decays, I want to put the plural there. The other forms retire. They must eventually subside, fall apart, and be regathered. And that which is required to nourish and keep strong the outer lacks, as the form ages, but lacking also will and planned intent, at least many of the Devas. Sorry. They feel no aggravation and know no clear sense of revolt. So, aggravation and revolt are the lot of mankind, especially during the sacrificial mission of emanation and encapsulation in form. Okay, so that's the stanza. And let's see. A word about pain might be in place here, and also there's a wonderful section about pain in esoteric psychology too. We're familiar with the exercise mantra, no pain, no gain. We're also aware that the fourth ray, which characterizes us now, humanity in particular, its soul in particular, is along with the second ray, the ray most acutely sensitive to pain. A word about pain might be in place here, though I have naught of an abstruse nature to communicate anent the evolution of the human hierarchy through the medium of pain. And that's a big hint, isn't it? That without pain, given our present circumstances, there would not be possible rapid evolution, which we are much in need of, having lost time. We're told that the fourth ray, particularly, is sensitive to pain, and that we have done much amiss in the past, and this use of pain, which makes of us graduates eventually of the school of purifying pain and releasing sorrow, this is characteristic of humanity on this planet. Purifying pain. Due much to the errors on the moon chain and in the previous solar system, kind of a correction to the third ray under which we functioned, both on the moon chain and when applicable in the previous major solar system. The devas do not suffer pain, as does mankind. Makes you wonder, then, do they suffer pain in a way that is not like mankind's suffering of pain? I guess we have to get used to the presence of this guiding intervention of pain, telling us when we deviate from the law. Because when we do, pain will be suffered. When we deviate from the archetype, pain will be suffered. When humanity deviates from the archetype, pain will be suffered. To keep the human being within the bounds of the law, which after all is the fastest way to evolve, to follow the will of God or whatever hierarchy we have, and not deviate from the archetypes conceived in the mind of that hierarchy, is the way of more rapid evolution. But of the devas, he says, their rate of rhythm is steadier, although in line with the law. So, let's just say mankind more subject to fluctuation. And that's why the devas are involved so much in what we call natural law and the higher laws. They are a steadying factor. They learn, the devas, mhm, they learn through the application to the work of building, mhm, and through incorporation into the form of that which is built. The learning method of the devas. By being built into form and holding steadily within that form, they learn. And man, what does he do? Something quite different. That inner spirit of revolt, and remember our planetary logos has in it, in himself, the spirit of rebellion. They learn through application to the work of building, through incorporation into the form of that which is built. They grow through appreciation of and joy in the forms built and the work accomplished. It's a different way. Now, maybe human beings who have been in the Deva kingdom or are strongly influenced by the seventh ray, they too rejoice in the work built. But in general, there is a different method. The Devas build and humanity breaks. And, how can I dramatize that in terms of color? I would like to. I wish I had a real palette of color, then I could code things in the proper color language, at least as I understand it. So the Devas build, and this is a key thing, and humanity breaks. And through the shattering of forms, learns through discontent. So if we wonder why we are subject to this divine discontent, it has to do with our nature simply as human beings, the parallel kingdom to the ones that build. And of course, it suggests, and somewhere, in my Cosmic Fire commentary, I made a little chart which show devas and humanity, or humanity and devas, and the human beings are 1-2, and devas are 2-3. They both meet on the second ray, and we're told that if we want self-conscious devas at our ceremonies and other activities, we have to invite them, not try to command them. Lesser devas maybe can be commanded, and elementals can be commanded, and we will learn the safe methods of doing so as time passes and we are in need of such information. Thus, acquiescence in the work of the greater builders, thus is acquiescence in the work of the greater builders achieved. And of course, that word acquiescence is a very important Devic word. Suppliant to devas, acquiescent. Devas. But really the ABCs are now being presented, and maybe more in the third installment will be presented. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing, you know, and all knowledge is a little knowledge, and therefore knowledge is a dangerous thing until there is a real respect for the plan and a readiness to use all knowledge as wisely as may be possible. Pain is that upward struggle through matter, maybe on the path of evolution. It may not be felt. Possible here? Involution, rather. And yet, emanative confinement would suggest pain, pain of loss of the scope of consciousness. But anyway, pain is that upward struggle through matter which lands a man at the feet of the Logos. And here, you know, we have these wonderful definitions. Pain is the following of the line of greatest resistance, which initiates and disciples will pursue, maybe not aspirants with any regularity. Pain is the following of the line of greatest resistance, and thereby reaching the summit of the mountain. Pain is the smashing. When you hear a word like that, you know Vulcan is involved. Smashing of the form and the reaching of the inner fire. Pain is the cold of isolation which leads to the warmth of the central sun. Pain, what wonderful definitions, you know, of the necessity and advantages of pain. And when one is subject to it, though, it's maybe hard to appreciate the eventualities here listed. Pain is the cold of isolation which leads to the warmth of the central sun. Pain is the burning in the furnace in order finally to know the coolness of the water of life. Pain is the journeying into the far country, and that is on the path of involution, resulting in the welcome to the Father's home where the Father runs forth, symbolically and in terms of energy, to greet the returning prodigal son. Pain is the illusion of the Father's disowning, to which so much of Christianity in the conventional sense is subject. The illusion of the Father's disowning, which drives the prodigal straight to the Father's heart. Pain is the cross of utter loss that renders back, and here we connect pain with the fourth initiation, the cross of utter loss. When you are crucified, when you renounce, you lose it all in the great renunciation, that all being everything we were attached to that is not real, that renders back the riches of the eternal bounty. Pain is the whip that drives the struggling builder to carry to perfection the building of the temple. You know, we might call this our artistic agony on the seventh and fourth rays, the two most practically artistic rays. So all this is pain. And this is a kind of section of paragraph for which I have always looked and referenced and sometimes lost, but here the lost is found. The line of greatest resistance, reaching the summit. The smashing of the form so that the inner fire can be reached. The cold of excommunication, isolation, a fancied excommunication, leading to the warmth of the central spiritual sun. Maybe the central sun is more the soul, and the central spiritual sun is the monad. The burning to know the coolness of the water of life, the many energies which are released on high for our benefit and the benefit of those within the lower kingdoms. The journeying into the far country, resulting in the welcome to the Father's home. I leave the Father's home, and turning back I save. And when one brings the red cattle of Geryon to or towards the Father, the welcome is particularly joyous, because then one is fulfilling the role of Savior. The illusion of that great gulf between God and man, and it is an illusion which has accounted for so many distortions and almost wicked persecutions, not almost, wicked persecutions in the scorpionic Christian approach to life. And the prodigal will go straight to the Father's heart, because the prodigal is still the Spirit, an aspect of the Spirit, and cannot stand to be separated from the Father. Pain, the cross of utter loss. That cross has to be overturned. We learned that in the previous stanza. But you can't take anything with you when the cross is overturned. All that we were attached to has to be renounced, and then, of course, regathered on a higher turn of the spiral, regathered in the sense beyond having. Being is beyond having. So to be something is greater than to have that something. There's still a duality in the having that renders back the riches of the eternal bounty, the great and many energies pouring through space. We have felt the whip, the sting, the backlash, and this begins to look like the old stories of building the pyramids. Of course, I don't think they were built in that manner, but supposedly the slave labor built these pyramids and other temples, and suffered under the lash. We know the story of Moses, that is probably Master Moria, who found an overseer beating a slave and killed the overseer out of indignation. So the uses of pain, that's what we've been looking at here. The uses of pain, he says, are many, and they lead the human soul out of darkness into light, out of bondage into liberation, both of which are Piscean in a sense, out of agony. Remember how the second ray agonizes its way towards the goal, out of agony and into peace. That peace, that light, and that liberation within the ordered harmony of the cosmos are for all the sons of men. And of course, that is a generic statement. It's not discriminating men from women. It's all Manus. We are the sons of higher Manus, the sons and daughters of higher Manus. We are the children of higher Manus. So these are the uses of pain. Maybe easy to understand and difficult to endure. But we can't say we haven't been warned. And when these things come upon us, we must recognize the moment and then reflect back upon what we have been told. And this liberation for all, sometimes Aquarius, is called the sign of liberation. And Pisces, in my view, is liberation through identification. So I'm going to, actually going to put that down. Put that down. That while Aquarius is the sign of liberation, the fixed cross, blinding light, fiery pain, bitter woe, and yet the cross of liberation when we get to the highest of all those fixed signs, Aquarius. So while Aquarius is the sign of liberation, Pisces is the sign of liberation through identification, and therefore a still higher achievement, which opens the door into Shambhala. All these things lying apparently far ahead, but maybe not as far as we think. Remember how rapidly, shockingly, the second, third, and fourth initiations, the fourth initiation of liberation, can be taken in the same life or in the next. So we have to go with the guidance provided by our solar angel, a much wiser being than we, and digging in the mine of trust. Simply trust that guidance and the powers that staged energetic circumstances for us so that we may make the most rapid progress for the sake of our offered service. The next, then, also from the old commentary. The old commentary, wonderful. We have sometimes books and pamphlets on the old commentary, but how should we explain these old commentaries? I remember working particularly with some of the latter stanzas of Dzyan as found in a treatise on cosmic fire. So profound, you know, all you can do is offer speculation, which I tried to do. Some of it will be correct, maybe. Some of it will be incorrect, probably. But that's what we have to do. We're given in symbolic language certain quite old phrases. And what do they really mean? So we must exercise our reasonable speculation until reason becomes pure reason, and then certainty arrives. This is also from the old commentary. And they are not easy. They are not easy to understand. So as long as we know our limitations, we can at least speculate a little. The assuaging waters cool. They slowly bring relief, abstracting form from all that can be touched. Maybe the dissolving power of water. You know, we're dealing with coolness and heat here. The quivering fever heat of long repressed desire for return yields to the cooling draught. Water and pain negate each other, and this is practically so. We have experienced. Long is the process of the cooling draught, the cooling draught of water. We have been burning on the burning ground, burning with the ardent desire to return to our true spiritual estate. But eventually the abundance of the waters of life will offer compensation for lives long separated from their source. So all these are modes of liberation, however long they may take. We have undertaken sacrificially a great journey, and yet it does not mean we have forgotten our high estate and do not wish to return to it, but hopefully returning to it with many in tow who have been uplifted. Again, the red cattle of Geryon, the people subject simply to red desire, who can be lifted into the chalice of the causal body and given a higher range and an increased point of tension. The burning fire releases all that blocks the way of life, and life upon the burning ground frees us from pent up, unrequited desire. This comes and follows after fire, after the burning, as fire upon the waters. And this reminds me of the second initiation, in which baptism by fire follows baptism by water. Water and fire together blend and cause the great illusion, steam, fog, clouds, and yet the fire must be applied. Fog is the product of mist and steam and noise. So there is a auditory dimension here. Veiling the light, hiding the truth, shutting out the sun. And yet, water and fire must be brought together. There are all kinds of alchemical reasons for this. I'm not an alchemist, but I know that those who are deeply versed in the subject will understand why certain elements have to be combined, in this case, water and fire. I'm remembering in the Masonic opera, The Magic Flute, which I had the privilege of once directing, the candidate Tamino, the prince, accompanied by Pamina, his soul companion, had to undergo the tests of water and then the tests of fire. In the old Egyptian mysteries, is probably the most esoteric opera that exists, written by, composed by Mozart. And I think the librettist was a certain chicanator, a Mason. Mozart actually composed a fair bit of Masonic music. The fire burns fiercely, pain and waters disappear. So, no astral reaction eventuates. Cold heat, the light of day, the radiance of the rising sun, and perfect knowledge of truth appear. This is an alchemical process leading to illumination. And I'll just bring that idea forward. This is an alchemical process leading to illumination. There are all kinds of illumination, all kinds of intensity of the light. What is it about those particles of light that renders them more or less intense? There is a blinding light, finally. And in a way, the whole universe is light. There are mysteries here, and maybe they can somewhat be solved in the Kabbalah. So this is the path for all who seek the light. A summary, right? First form and all its longing, and we have to say desire working through the form. Then pain of detachment. Well, first of unfulfillment, and then detachment, then the assuaging waters and the appearance of a little fire. The fire grows, the heat, and heat is then active within the tiny sphere and does its final or its fiery work on the burning grounds. Moisture likewise is seen. You can't avoid glamour when this process is going on. Exaggerations, distortions. Moisture likewise is seen, dense fog, the product of both heat and water. And to the pain is added sad bewilderment. Should we say, which comes from not seeing the true goal? For they who use the fire of mind during the early stage are lost within a light illusory. We see this today with all the rampant conspiracy theories, bewilderment, but the people involved not even knowing they are lost and being satisfied with light illusory as if it were the truth, which it is not. And yet, fighting to the death to maintain satisfied, fighting to the death to maintain their illusory certainties. Fierce grows the heat as initiations progress. And next comes the loss of power to suffer because of disidentification. And when this stage has been outgrown, there comes the shining of the unobstructed sun and the clear blight, not bright, not blight, light of truth. And this is the path back to the hidden center, which has been left by an aspect of the original spirit in its divisibility, left behind while not being left behind. So hence a paradox. And now the deliberate way that the true disciple initiate can utilize, use pain, call for the fire, O pilgrim in a strange and foreign land. We might say pilgrim, part of the monad, or the monad in extension. And that makes me want to monad in extension, MDIX, or EX, monad in extension. Oh, call for the fire, O pilgrim, we, the prodigal son, in a strange and foreign land, foreign to our true nature as spirit. The waters wash away the mud and slime of nature's growth, which is washing away the product of lower elemental living, driven by the elementals. Fire burns the hindering forms, which seek to hold the pilgrim back, and so bring release. The fires bring release. You've seen things fall apart under the influence of fire. The washed forms. Living waters as a river. And we, again, one thinks of Hercules and his cleansing actions in Aquarius. The living waters as a river sweep the pilgrim to the Father's heart. The fires destroy the veil, hiding the Father's face, and revealing that face only at the fifth initiation. Before that, star, and immediately before the fifth initiation, the eye regarding the candidate, and only then at the fifth initiation, face to face. So all this is about the use of water and fire to achieve illumination brought by seeing the Father face to face. It leads to mastership. Very, and what I'm giving here, just some thoughts, some hints, perhaps, and others of you will derive other thoughts and hints. I just seek to get the ball rolling and get the process going, making no claims that I have anything like a definitive interpretation. I'm working here by association, from having long studied, yet not long enough, the works of the Tibetan and of Blavatsky, maybe to a lesser extent. And, makes me kind of want to read aloud and without interruption the actual stanzas we've been through, at least some of it. So one of them to be read aloud without interruption, Discipleship and Pain. Sons of men who know and see and hear, and knowing know they know, suffer the pain of conscious limitation. Deep in the inmost depths of conscious being, their lost estate of liberty eats like a canker. Pain, sickness, poverty, and loss are seen as such. And from them every son of God revolts. He knows that in himself, as once he was before, he entered prisoner into form, he knew not pain. Sickness and death, corruption and disease, they touched him not. The riches of the universe were his, and naught he knew of loss. The lives that enter into form along with lives self-conscious, I realized here the devas, referred to are not self-conscious. The lives that enter into form along with lives self-conscious, the deva lives, which build the forms indwelt by all the sons of God, they know not pain or loss or poverty. The form decays. The other forms retire. And that which is required to nourish and keep strong the outer lacks. And what I have to do, have not done it, but lacking also will and planned intent, they feel no aggravation and know not clear revolt. So, here it is. And I've been meaning to show it to you, of course. Now, the one we just read, let's look at that without stopping. It's long. The assuaging waters cool. They slowly bring relief, abstracting form from all that can be touched. The quivering fever heat of long repressed desire yields to the cooling draught. Water and pain negate each other. Long is the process of the cooling draught. The burning fire releases all that blocks the way of life. Bliss comes and follows after fire, as fire upon the waters. Water and fire together blend and cause the great illusion. Fog is the product of mist and steam and noise, veiling the light, hiding the truth, and shutting out the sun. The fire burns fiercely, pain and the waters disappear. Cold, heat, the light of day, the radiance of the rising sun, and perfect knowledge of the truth appear. This is the path for all who seek the light, form first and all its longing, then pain, then the assuaging waters and the appearance of a little fire. The fire grows, and heat is then active within the tiny sphere and does its fiery work. Moisture likewise is seen, dense fog, and to the pain is added sad bewilderment, for they who use the fire of mind during the early stage are lost within the light illusory. Fierce grows the heat. Next comes the loss of power to suffer. When this stage has been outgrown, there comes the shining of the unobstructed sun and the clear, bright light of truth. This is the path back to the hidden center. Use pain. Call for the fire, O pilgrim, in a strange and foreign land. The waters wash away the mud and slime of nature's growth. The fires burn the hindering forms which seek to hold the pilgrim back and so bring release. The living waters as a river sweep the pilgrim to the Father's heart. The fires destroy the veil, hiding the Father's face. Yes, and then comes something quite amazing, but before I get into that, I'd just like to read the very first of the stanzas we looked at, straight through, without all of my commentary, which, of course, somewhat interrupts the flow of the intent behind these wonderful stanzas. So this is the sublimation of the 5 human stages. Stage 1. The life has climbed the stairway long through daily use of form. Through the lesser 3, with progress slow, the long path has been traveled. Another door stands open now. The words sound forth. Enter upon the way of real desire. The life that only knows itself as form enshrouds itself in vivid red, the red of known desire, and through the red all longed for forms approach, are grasped and held, used and discarded, until the red changes to rose, and rose to palest pink, and pink to white. Forth flowers then the pure white rose of life. The tiny rose of living life is seen in bud, not yet the full-blown flower. Stage 2. The picture changes form. Another voice, coming from close at hand, utters another phrase. The life continues on its way. Enter the field where children play and join their game. Awaken to the game of life. The soul passes the gate. The field is green, and on its broad expanse the many forms of the one moving life disport themselves. They weave the dance of life, the many-patterned forms God takes. The soul enters the playground of the Lord and plays thereon until he sees the star with 5 bright points and says, "My star." Stage 3. The way of red desire fails. It loses its allure. The playground of the sons of God no longer holds appeal. The voice, which has twice sounded from out the world of form, sounds now within the heart. The challenge comes. Prove thine own worth. Take to thyself the orange ball of thy one-pointed purpose. Responsive to the sounded word, the living soul, immersed in form, emerges from the many forms and hews its onward way. The way of the destroyer comes, the builder and again the tearer down of forms. The broken forms hold not the power to satisfy. The soul's own form is now the great desire, and thus there comes the entering of the playground of the mind. But in these dreams and fantasies, at times a vision comes, a vision of a folded lotus flower, close-petaled, tightly sealed, lacking aroma yet, but bathed in cold blue light. Orange and blue in some more distant time will blended be, but far off yet the date. Their blending bathes the bud in light and causes future opening. Let the light shine. Stage 4. Into the dark, the life proceeds. A different voice seems to sound forth. Enter the cave and find your own. Walk in the dark, and on your head carry a lighted lamp. The cave is dark and lonely. Cold it is, and a place of many sounds and voices. The voices of the many sons of God, left playing on the playground of the Lord, make their appeal for light. The cave is long and narrow. The air is full of fog. The sound of running water meets the rushing sound of wind and frequent roll of thunder. Far off, dim and most vaguely seen, appears an oval opening, its color blue. Stretched athwart this space of blue, a rosy cross is seen, and at the center of the cross, where four arms meet, a rose. Upon the upper limb, a vibrant diamond shines, within a star, five-pointed. The living soul drives forward towards the cross, which bars his way to life, revealed and known. Not yet the cross is mounted, and therefore left behind, but onward goes the living soul, eyes fixed upon the cross, ears open to the wailing sounds of all his brother souls. Stage 5. Out into radiant life and light. The cave is left behind. The cross is overturned. The way stands clear. The word sounds clear within the head and not within the heart. Enter again the playground of the Lord, and this time lead the games. The way upon the second tier of stairs stands barred. This by the soul's own act. No longer red desire governs all the life, but now the clear blue flame burns strong. Upon the bottom step of the barred way, he turns back and passes down the stairs onto the playground, meeting dead shells built in an earlier stage, stepping upon forms discarded and destroyed, and holding forth the hands of helpfulness. Upon his shoulder sits the bird of peace, upon his feet the sandals of the messenger. Not yet the utter glory of the radiant life, not yet the entering into everlasting peace, but still the work and still the lifting of the little ones. So inspiring. And you know, the future and the past, the way we have come, where we are, how we will go. And this is universal. The rewards are for all the sons and daughters of men, for all the children of God. The rewards are for all. And the painful experiences which have been undergone are also for all. And they lie deep in our subconscious mind. Now here's one I have memorized. I've forgotten it, of course, because use it or lose it, you know. But I'm going to read it first and then analyze it, okay? So he tells us there is a curious and ancient Atlantean chant, which is no longer used, but in those far-off times was chanted by the initiate who took the third initiation. So there's a big hint there. The consummating initiation of that period. And it goes as follows. The translation of the symbols in which it was written necessitates the loss of rhythm and potency. Maybe one day we will know how to read those symbols. And this is so powerful, really, you know, you wonder why should it not be used again, and maybe it will be. I'm going to make that a little smaller so I can get to it. I stand between the heavens and earth. I vision God. I see the forms God took. I hate them both. Naught do they mean to me. For one I cannot reach, and for the lower of the two, I have no longer any love. Torn I am. Space and its life I cannot know, and so I want it not. Time and its myriad forms I know too well. Pendant I hang between the two, desiring neither. God from high heaven speaks, there is a change. I hear, with ear attentive and listening, turn my head. That which I visioned, yet visioning could not reach, is nearer to my heart. Old longings come again, yet die. Old chains of glamour snap. Forward I rush. Myriads of voices speak and halt me in my tracks. The thunder of the sounds of earth shuts out the voice of God. I turn me on my forward path and vision once again the long-held joys of earth and flesh and kin. I lose the vision of eternal things. The voice of God dies out. Torn again am I, but only for a little time. Backward and forward shifts my little self, e'en as a bird soars into heaven and settles back again upon the tree. Yet God in his high place outlasts the little bird. Thus do I know that God will victor be, and later hold my mind and me in thrall. Hark to the joyous paean that I chant. The work is done. My ear is deaf to all the calls of earth, except to that small voice of all the hidden souls within the outer forms, for they are as myself. With them I am at one. God's voice rings clear, and in the tones and overtones, the little voices of the little forms dim and fade out. I dwell within a world of unity. I know all souls are one. Swept am I by the universal life, and as I sweep upon my onward way, the way of God, I see all lesser energies die out. I am the one, I God. I am the form in which all forms are merged. I am the soul in which all souls are fused. I am the life, and in that life all little lives remain. And then these words chanted in the ancient formulas on peculiar and selected notes were most potent and brought definite results in certain ancient ceremonies which have long since died out. And of course, the Tibetan would be in a position to see and understand through the reading of the records these ancient ceremonies. I find that particular one so inspiring. And I think that still something of its nature comes through. One can see what has to be achieved at that third degree. And there is a kind of evocation of the possibility of achieving it, ancient though it may be. And I think the rhythm and the potency will return. We're entering a seventh ray age. It's an age of rhythm. And in the Vedas, there are various meters on which chants are sent forth. But this, of course, is even older. Atlantean times, and the Vedas, as far as I know, are of the Aryan times. I stand between the heavens and earth, the higher planes and their possible points of tension and revelation, and everything we are accustomed to in the dense physical body of the planetary logos or solar logos. I vision God, maybe we might say, our planetary logos, okay, and here, higher points of tension. And I see also the forms God took through emanation in time. All the many possible perceptions relevant to the lower worlds. I hate them both. It's pretty strong, isn't it? Well, sometimes when you can't achieve something, you have that sour grapes reaction. Well, they probably were sour, says the fox who can't quite reach the grapes. And then, of course, there's the nausea of repetition. Repetition of that which leads nowhere forward. He's done everything he could uh, within those lower worlds, and it has not been satisfying. He cannot relate to either one. He rejects one, and well, he rejects them both. For one, he says, I cannot reach. This is the candidate speaking. And now it would seem that the disciple or initiate would continue to strive to reach, but there must be the settling in of despair. I'll never reach it. And for the lower of the two, I have no longer any love, as once I did in an all-consuming way. But finally, nausea settles in. You try to go backward, you suffer nausea. You try to go forward, you suffer fear. Until, of course, the right attitude is developed. So here we have the tearing and the so-called wretched aspirant. I know an astrologer who's always talking about the particular state of wretchedness in which her clients find themselves. But it's the result of rending, non-integration. Space is looked at here as superior to time. And, we might say the candidate has given up. He just says, I cannot know them. And so rather than suffer from the inability to know, he rejects. So rather than suffer from the inability to acquire, he rejects. I'm dividing things up, and its myriad forms, all emanated and of hierarchical significance, some greater than others. I know too well. There's the nausea. You know how it is when you've eaten all you can eat and someone says, well, have a little more. You must stop. This is surfeit. You must stop. Otherwise, you'll have a really adverse reaction. Pendant I hang. between the two, desiring neither, and it's a dark space and disorienting. But then there is an intervention, because God, the higher beings, see the state of wretchedness in which the candidate is found and set forth to redeem and send forth energies that will redeem. So a voice is heard, and there is a change, hope, and the possible end of wretchedness. Hope. And he really listens. I hear with ear attentive and listening, turn my head, which is a reorientation. That which I visioned, because at least there was a sense of what could lie ahead, even though one had to give up in despair that it could not be reached. That which I visioned, yet visioning could not reach, is nearer to my heart, meaning I really understand it better than before, because the heart is in its own way an organ of understanding, maybe deeper than a lot of superficial mental understanding. It's not a consistent experience. Why? Well, we're just not stable yet. But even though the old longings for kith and kin and all that is apparently left behind come in, these longings do die, and so are unstable in their own right, which is fortunate. And the result is that I'm no longer bewildered after a time. Old chains of glamour snap. My bewilderment begins to cease. And forward I rush. Of course, DK has said that nothing can keep the integrated man from rushing across the bridge which it is newly possible to cross. So suddenly there's power, because the tearing dissipates power, and the integration releases power. What are you going to do with that power? Well, you do what your desire tells you. You rush forward towards the goal. And will it succeed? Excuse me. But, everything is not yet stable. Myriads of voices from the past and from that left behind speak and halt me in my tracks. One does not necessarily accomplish everything by rushing ahead. Some chains of glamour may have snapped, but they can still bind one, the ones that have not snapped. And you get so far, it's like an animal on a leash, and suddenly you're pulling against your neck and you have to turn around. Glamour has mastered you in the past, and it's the master of the moment. So I can't go any farther. I'm halted. The thunder of the sounds of earth. And in this case, let's just say thunder means lots of loud noises from the cacophony of earth events. Noises and cacophony. Yeah. And I'm overcome. The still small voice of God is overcome by that collective noise. By the so there is still instability. And I know, I remember in my own life, I was trying to make a fateful decision. And, it would have involved occultism on one side and the arts, or it would have involved medicine on another side. And in the morning, I was medical. And then running as far on my leash as I could, I began to choke and reverted to what had already been stabilized, occult and the arts. Or maybe I should turn them around, Either way, I learned that you cannot just charge forward when the issue is actually basically deeply unresolved. And finally, I chose occult and the arts, which was the right choice, or maybe was compelled thereto by circumstances. So, what happens? The voice of God is shut out. The higher choice is shut out. I turn me on my forward path. I revolve. And maybe with relief at first, until disgust sets in. Vision once again, the long-held joys of earth and flesh and kin. So, DK sometimes personality relief when the wrong choice is made. And for however long a time, I lose the vision of eternal things, the things that will really bring me into the triad, into the spirit, into identification. And the voice of God dies out, but only for a time, as in any titanic battle. Each side will assert and reassert until one finally overcomes. The angel finally overcomes the the dweller. And sure enough, things don't rest easy with the person that turns back. Things do not rest easy with the candidate who turns back, or the climber who turns back down the mountain. So he's torn, but only for a little time. And it keeps on going that way. And I've had that experience, agonizing, distressing, daily. For different people, it will be different things. Backward and forward shifts my little self. Because, that's the smaller perspective that really does not yet know. E'en as a bird soars into heaven, but can't sustain the flight. I'm sure we've had that experience. Not able to sustain the flight. And settles back again upon the tree, the long familiar support or branch which has provided security. It's a little less secure to fly, so it seems, than to really stay aerial. No, excuse me, than to really, land on the familiar branch. And here's what DK basically says about the whole thing, or at least that old commentary does. Yet God in his high place outlasts the little bird, because God is more powerful. Thus do I know that God will victor be. The hope comes, and you realize which way it's trending, and later hold my mind and me, all my personal inclinations, in thrall. The ray of hope really arrives, and assurance appears. So maybe not yet is the total achievement, but one knows one is heading in the proper direction. And there will be victory. So we've turned now. And now we come into the fullness, into realization where the joy lies. Hark to the joyous, solemn, sacred song, paean, that I chant. Notice the seventh ray implication of the word chant. Enchanting, magical, chant. The work is done. I'm identified with God, who has outlasted uh, little bird. And as a result, my ear is deaf to all the calls of earth. I'm no longer allured by form, or lured. No longer lured by familiar form, except the bodhisattva impulse here to that small voice of all the hidden souls within the outer forms. And we might say, who are as yet not liberated, for they are as myself. With them I am at one. So the consciousness, of unity and even of identification takes over. And I do have to come back, and the cross is overturned, but I go back onto the playing field and lead the games. Maybe this is occurring at the 3rd degree, but by the 5th degree, the complete process has occurred. And now in this new life and in this new way of apprehension, God's voice, not all those lesser voices, rings clear, and in its tones and overtones, the wonder of God's energies and how God's energies sound forth, and in its tones and overtones, as any musician will know, the little voices of the little forms dim and fade out, even though the soul within those forms will be served. I dwell within a world of unity. I know all souls are one, and well, that's definitely the 3rd initiation achievement. So this is outstandingly um, 3rd initiation achievement. Unity, and realized oneness, at least the first level of this realization. Swept, now great currents are coming in, and the monad is coming in via the universal life. Swept am I by the universal life through the power of my monad. And as I sweep upon my onward way, never backwards now, and the way of God, and not the way of settling back on the branch and longing for earth and kith and kin and flesh and form. And as I sweep upon my onward way, having been liberated, the way of God, the way of identification as the higher power, as the higher power, I see all lesser energies die out. At least they are of no significance to me as a lure. I may have to deal with them in the Mahamaya and find the souls who are still enslaved by those energies, but I hear the voice of God. basically, what is sounding in my ear is the voice of God. But I am attentive to the voices of the entrapped souls. And then the great affirmation, I am the one, I God. And here is real identification as God. Oop. A God, at least planetary logos or solar logos or beyond, um, the one great God, you would not be forgiven for saying so, really, because of the split in the human mind, the tendency towards dichotomization, which cannot easily be overcome, except overcome finally as a result of time and application. I am the form in which all forms are merged, and this was this is the form of God which Krishna showed to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. I am the soul in which all souls are fused, so soul infusion results in the realization of group consciousness. But let me correct I am the life, finally, which is the essential monad. And in that life, all little lives remain. So I am the all-inclusive one in universe. Of course, we're not, well, we could go beyond the universe. I know it sounds like a strange phrase, but okay, so, but we're talking about our vast and present universe. And so he says again, these words chanted in the ancient formulas on peculiar and selected notes, one wonders what the frequency may be, you know, and whether we're dealing with the diatonic scale. Whoop, don't want that. Right. So, on peculiar and selected notes, this has to be for the magician or a musician, something of a real question. What notes are involved? And let's see here how I can do this. No color. Okay, sometimes I lose my brackets, you know. Maybe losing one's brackets is better than losing one's mind, but that can happen too. Okay. So when he uses the word peculiar, what is the frequency of peculiar notes? That is a question. What is the frequency? Now, there's no certainty about frequencies and what is the true, middle C, or what is the true A to which orchestras attune. And in the days of Bach, I'm advised by those who know harmony very well that everything was down a half step from what it is now. But okay, one day this can be revealed when the color and sound language is again made clear to us, instead of so totally blinded that we cannot have ascertainment, real certainty. And they were very potent, and they brought about results in certain ancient ceremonies which have long died out. Well, if these ceremonies have long died out, I'm sure that ceremonies of equal strength will be substituted. So friends, we're just about now ready to get into part one of the real study of the 6 stages of discipleship. And, that has to be of practical influence. I remember long ago, I think it was in 1972, so almost 50 years ago, sitting on a bench at a beach in Maine and kind of opening that book, one of the books that I had from the library at Olcott, the center in Illinois, Theosophical Center, and seeing that discipleship training was available. And I didn't ever conceive that such a thing would be possible, but I was quite happy with what I saw, and immediately wrote to the Arcane School and entered into that process. So here we have some very important text regarding discipleship training. At least, we want to make sure that we are adequate in our discipleship. That much we want to make sure. And whether that goes on to initiation or not, that's all between yourself and the master. It's really nobody else's business. And the various ways of indication of initiation have been given to us. So we will know. Every disciple is said to be preparing for initiation, and it is of the greatest value to know which initiation we are preparing for. If we somehow, usually mistakenly, almost invariably mistakenly, think we are preparing for the 4th initiation, it may really be the 2nd initiation for which we are preparing. It's a difficult initiation, the 2nd, and the stress and pain of it may make a person think they are passing through the great renunciation or crucifixion. But our sense of proportion becomes stabilized in time and reports to us more accurately what is the case regarding our own work, our own status, our own possibilities, and what we can contribute to the group or groups with which we are affiliated. So all in good time is adjusted if we will make haste slowly, as we have been advised in an ancient adage, and by Roberto Saggioli, who was the disciple F.C.D. If we make haste slowly, securely, though we may be agonizing our way to the goal, we will be certain of attainment, certain of achievement. We cannot say that what we need to achieve in order to achieve achievement, okay, has not been given to us. It has been given to us. But what use do we make of it? That is the question. So that's the responsibility of each and every one of us. So we'll begin, this section on the 6 stages of discipleship. We've already mentioned them at the very outset of these programs, but we will mention further and in greater detail, following what DK has said about them. And we will be attempting the most thorough kind of assimilation that may have been possible to us yet, because the great conclave is coming, and we want to be ready for that, and we want to be ready for the new teaching. Now, we can speculate what that might be all about, but at least let us have the certainty that a new teaching of bridging treatises will be appearing, and how wonderful that will be to fill out the knowledge that is necessary for us and other servers as we enter the Aquarian age and really attempt to bring humanity as much as possible into the light. Not that we're arbiters of the final light, but we have some light, and others we recognize are on quite a darkened path, and we can offer that light. So I'll get this out to you and get ready to move further. And lots of love and many blessings to everybody. And study hard and meditate deeply and serve in the best way that you can, as wisely as you can, given your position and your abilities. And then all will be well. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.